Well, it's been almost exactly 2 years, and finally, the pandemic is dissipating. We made our choices, we learned our lessons, and it's a new dawn. And it's a new season for the year 2022, and a new time for all of us to embrace new life, new opportunities, new abundance. And while we balance our care and genuine prayer for peace and the awareness of a world that still includes unthinkable tragedy and sorrow and even war, we also are grateful for how blessed we are. And so let us use this spring of 2022 to take everything that we've learned, clear the past, and move forward in gratitude for the freedom that we have, for the blessings of our lives, for the opportunity to come together again in community, online, and yes, in person. We are all part of the awakening world, and we all have the roles that we're playing as individuals and collectively. We are the imaginal cells finding each other to create a beautiful, incredible butterfly out of the old paradigm. So welcome to spring of 2022. Welcome to the awakening world.
We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, stronger than ever, not divided. We come from the same source, a powerful love force. We're coming together, hear the call, you are invited. We come from the same source, a powerful love force.
Hello, everybody. Namaste. Happy Sacred Sunday to you. I want to welcome everybody coming into our Zoom room. And wow, I see so many of our friends, a lot of our regulars, and also some new people with us. So, as always, we always like to ask people to let us know where you are coming from geographically. We always love to see people from all over. And I want to welcome our friends on Unify. When you see me looking down, I'm looking at our Unify screen. And that's where we get people from all over the world. So it's pretty exciting. For those of you who are watching on Facebook, and a big thank you to John and Summer Raymer and the Sign Network for getting us out over 100 different Facebook groups and pages. Thank you. And I always say thank you to Alan Steinfeld and his YouTube channel, and Alan's on the show today. So I get to say a special directly to you, Alan. And it's really wonderful having these broadcast partners like Alan and the Sign Network and Unify that help get these shows out to everybody. And if you want to, come on in and join the Global Peace Tribe. It's really easy. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com, and register. It takes about a minute. And once you register, you will get the links to all of our shows for the next 3 months, all the way through the end of June. And we do a show Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday. And our shows always take a particular topic and we really explore it. And today's topic is really all about understanding breakthroughs in consciousness, breakthroughs in science, spirituality, consciousness, and how we can take these new teachings, these breakthroughs, and apply them to our lives. And so I'm going to very briefly show you who you're going to really be hearing from the majority of today, which is our guests. And of course, I've been co-creating all weekend with Alan Steinfeld. He's brought on amazing people. I'm still trying to comprehend what Isaac and Adam had to say on Friday night. And just, it's been really powerful. And I know a lot of you have watched the previous shows, Friday night and Saturday night. And any of you who have missed them, make sure you register so you get the replay on Monday. Every Monday, we send out an email with links to all the replays of the previous shows. We also have with us Amelie Grace, and you've seen Amelie on our show. You've seen her, you've heard her sing. She is a brilliant musician, but today we get to hear what goes on in this incredible brain. Uh, our mutual friend Pramagai said, "Do you know how smart she is?" I said, "Well, I know she's a great singer." She said, "No, she's brilliant." So a big kind of welcome to, or thanks to Pramagai, because then I saw your course and here you are. So it's great to have you with us.
Yes, thank you.
And then friends of Alan's, JoJo and Steve, and Christian Johnson. And I only know what I've read about them in their bios. So I'm really eager to drop in, hear your wisdom, hear what you're doing as a couple, as an individual. And for all of you, they're all going to be sharing their wisdom and giving us homeopathic dosages of their medicine today. So thank you, everybody, for being with us, and we will hear from all of you in a moment.
Yeah.
But we always start the Sacred Sunday show with a brief meditation. And I want to acknowledge that we are a multi-denominational organization. We respect and honor all paths. We don't promote any religious path. But I always like to remind people that we can make any moment spiritual or sacred by seeing divinity, seeing the divinity in the people around us, seeing divinity in nature, seeing divinity even when we look in the mirror. And so that's what I like to encourage people to do, to make any day, any moment sacred. And the awakening world, as you saw in the opening bumper, it's all about all of us coming together, waking up. Obviously, our planet is going through an incredible change. We as human beings are going through a huge change. And we need to hear the tools that people like you're going to hear from today have to offer to help us with our relationships, to help us with our consciousness, to help us through the challenging times, and to help us to go from surviving, as I point to the reptile brain, to thriving, to flourishing. So I want to invite everybody to close their eyes, unless you're listening and operating a motor vehicle. Don't close your eyes in that case. But to close your eyes. And let's just start by taking some deep breaths, breathing at your own pace. And as you breathe, I invite you to now bring your attention fully into yourself, only allowing my voice to gently guide you. And as you breathe, and as you tune into your body temple, I invite you to do an inventory of your body. Have you had enough food? How did you rest last night? What's your emotional state? Are there any places in your body where there's discomfort that maybe you haven't paid attention to? Places in the body that need a little love, or support, or nurturing, or connection. And how is your state of awareness? How are you doing with being fully present? Present to my voice and to your body temple right now? Present to the circumstances taking place in your life? Present meaning not needing to change it, but just acknowledging it. Acknowledging comfortable feelings as well as uncomfortable feelings. And what does a sacred moment mean to you? What do you do to create something sacred in your life? Finally, I'd like to invite you to remember a time in your life when you heard something, when you read a meme on Facebook or you heard a teacher speak and something really clicked for you. Something that maybe changed your life. Might have changed your life just in a small way in that moment, helping you to remember something, or maybe it changed your life in a big way. I want to ask you to remember one moment when something you saw or heard made a very beautiful impact for you. And I'm asking you to remember how that felt in your body and to bring that memory in, because I want for today, our time together, to be that for each of you. May each of us hear at least one thing that really impacts us, that supports us in our journey of awakening. Because we have some wonderful teachers with us, some wonderful wisdom keepers who are going to share at least homeopathic dosages, if not more, of their unique medicine. So with that, I invite you to open your eyes again, come on back into our world, and welcome to the awakening world. And thank you for joining us. And please feel free to pop comments in, anything that came up during the meditation, any moments you want to share, where you're from geographically. And with no further ado, I am going to bring Alan Steinfeld, who's been my collaborator, longtime friend, colleague for this weekend, to introduce himself a little bit more and the topic, and then the guests that you brought on today.
Thank you, Scott. Me and Scott, if you don't know, have been collaborating since 1989. This is our 33rd year anniversary, although I hadn't seen him for about 20 years in that. But, I'm really thankful that Scott invited me on to set up this weekend. There's a little bit of feedback. Because,
Try lowering your volume a little bit.
okay.
I even noticed during the meditation there was kind of there was like a wind sound coming through your microphone. So,
Okay, how's that?
let's see.
Is that better here?
So far,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'm thankful to you, Scott, for allowing me to collaborate on this weekend, because these are some of my favorite people we've had on Friday, Zenka and Isaac and Adam, and last night with Desiree Hurtak and Carolyn Cory, Paul Hyneck, and today with some new friends that I really respect their path and what they have to offer. So if people haven't been watching the last few nights, it's been about quantum understanding. How do we take that leap? And we've talked about science and physics and even the input of what UFOs, ETs have to offer our planet. But now it's about transformation. I really wanted to highlight, we go from science to consciousness to how this internal movement is transforming the world. So that's why I brought some people that I think have a lot to offer. So do you want me to introduce them, or do you have something else?
Yeah. Go ahead. Here, I'll bring them on.
Okay, there's my friends Jojo Mikolasic. Is that it, Jojo?
Good job.
Okay, and Steve Sonos, and together they formed a organization called Ascension Together, which is their process and the techniques and tools they have to lead them from one level, actually coming out of the recovery community, into a total transformation of how to help people. Because and I find this for most people, when people have been through certain levels of healing, all we want to do is help others. This is our gift. It's what Marshall Rosenberg says in Nonviolent Communication, that we're here not to receive love, but to give love. So this is part of how Steve, Jojo, and my new friend Kristen Johnston, and her beautiful store in Western Mass. Is it Quantum Healing and Wellness? Is that what you're calling it?
Quantum health and wellness, yeah.
Right. Beautiful place. Crystal's books and a big back room that I gave a talk on making content. But Kristen's story is also very dramatic and transformational. And the way you express yourself, Kristen, I can see you on the world stage there. So I'm happy you're joining us on this little stage. So let's start with JoJo and Steve and their process. Do you want to introduce Amelie Grace first, or as far as wait, you're muted, Scott. I don't want to miss a word you're saying, Scott.
Well, let's go ahead and hear from Jojo and Steve a little bit.
Okay.
And then same thing. Question for everybody. Love to hear just kind of your relationship to this topic as a way of getting to know you a little bit. And something that Alan just mentioned is that you had a big healing process and now share that. So that intrigued me, and I'd love to hear more about that if you're willing to share.
Right, especially JoJo and Steve. I would love to hear also that
Alan,
process.
we're having a really bad feedback problem with you. So
Oh,
let's just let Jojo and Steve
okay.
share.
Thanks, friends. So, I've been a therapist for the past several years, and it was very clinical for a long time. Your orthodox, traditional CBT, mindfulness, DBT. And then Steve introduced me to non-duality and A Course in Miracles. And my understanding of reality started to change just a little bit, but really a bit. Because once you start to put these things into practice, what happens with consciousness is it expands and expands and expands to the point where I no longer could serve the clients under an agency that I was working in because it wasn't fitting into their mold anymore, which spurred the creation of Ascension Together, which is a private practice. And Steve facilitates the education part of that practice.
Yeah, thank you for having us on. Once I met JoJo and she started to come around, excuse me, to the meeting, she said, you know, we have to share this. And it was a blessing, you know, it was just a dream come true, because there's a real deep sense of passion of sharing the fortune that I've been blessed with and the experiences I've been able to come to have. And for me, it's all about perspective. You see, we're coming from one perspective, life can look fearful and alone and dangerous. And as you shift perspective, you can then see that you're never alone. You're not separated. Everything's okay. And you're connected to everyone and everything. So there's nothing to be concerned about.
Mm. You know, I mean, isn't that a really big part of our awakening is we do fall into the illusion of separation. And that's a lot of the conversation the last 2 days have been about that, about how really, whether it's from a scientific point of view or a spiritual point of view, understanding that we are not separate, we are all interconnected. And then how to really utilize that awareness as more than an intellectual idea, but as an experience. So I'm just curious if there's anything, and then we'll definitely get to Kristen and Amelie. Is there anything you can share about how to experience that awareness? Any tools for that?
Well, I also just want to add, if you can share a little bit of your own story and process, I think that will help us go deeper into
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I grew up in alcoholic, addicted household, so child of an addict, alcoholic, I took that road myself and had a pretty tumultuous teenage experience that landed me incarcerated for a few years. And if you want to have a wild experience and really shock to the nervous system and expand consciousness, I don't suggest you do it that way. But it sobered me up. And from there, I jumped into personal development through the 12-step program and kind of started my ascension journey consciously, where now I'm consciously aware that I'm on this path of getting to know myself and in turn getting to know God.
Mm-hmm.
And there was many layers over my life experience. I write about that in my book, Ascension Diary. That'll be out in a couple weeks. But I was always drawn to more knowledge, more truth, more experience. I've trained, it started with Tony Robbins and then Joe Dispenza and then Vishen Lakhiani over at Mind Valley. Also the faces and names that weren't on a platform yet, like my friend Patrick Balsley, who introduced me to the Flower of Life books by Drunvalo Melchizedek, and then Steve, who introduced me to non-duality and A Course in Miracles. And then I met Marissa Peer, who is the founder of RTT, which is the modality I facilitate for my clients now. And that brings us into the subconscious. That's rapid transformational therapy. It calms the nervous system through hypnosis. We fuse neuro-linguistic programming, CBT, and tapping into it. And then I was seeing the ability of people to really become aware, make connections, and shift their consciousness at an accelerated momentum. And that's kind of my sweet spot right now. It brings me so much joy to be able to see people gain relief in 90 minutes and long-term relief. Where I was working with people in the recovery community, talk therapy, a little CBT, a little mindfulness, and 6 months later, we could still be in the same spot.
Wow.
I love the work and I love to work with people, but I prayed in a Silva Ultramind meditation one night. I need something faster. I want a woman teacher and I want it now. I was pretty demanding. And the next day, Marissa Peer fell into my lap.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. What a great story. And thank you for being honest about, the hard part and the transformational part. And we certainly look forward to hearing more about rapid transformation. That I'm sure everybody's going, well, I want that.
Right.
Well, Steve's story is very dramatic too. Yes.
Thanks, Alan. You have to forgive me, maybe too much coffee, a little nervous, kind of still new to this. But I grew up, I think, in a very loving, supporting home. But in my mind, I was suffering. And around the age of 30, I had a pretty profound awakening that led me to many different teachers, modalities, and eventually A Course in Miracles, which I've been a student of for like 16 years, I think now. That led me to non-duality, which was just kind of wrapped up the whole picture for me. A Course in Miracles, you originally asked, how do we, like tools or something, you asked about making the transformation, right? How do we do that? Or for me, A Course in Miracles was a huge part of it, because they give you a lesson book. And what it's doing and what we're doing, I believe all of us, is reprogramming our brains so that we can experience a reality we want to experience as opposed to a reality we don't want to experience. We're not victims of the world. while we may not understand that, and we would, I'm sure most of us say, well, I didn't choose this. We are not victims of the world. And so we have the power to create experiences that we would like to experience, that are pleasurable, peaceful, happy, joyous. And we also have the power to create uncomfortable and painful experiences. So go ahead.
I just want to ask you why you thought you were a victim before.
Why I had a bad experience?
Or why you thought you might have been a victim of circumstance before. What was that thinking?
I mean, I really don't know, Alan. As far back as I can remember, I think it's just mental illness, probably, as far back as I can remember. And honestly, I feel like to some extent, everybody, that's a side effect of feeling separate. When we feel separate from everything we know and everything we see, it's easy to feel vulnerable. It's easy to feel a victim, perhaps, or that we have to stand and defend our little bit of space here. So I don't really know. I think it's just a natural thing. I feel like it served me, even though the first 30 years seemed pretty rough for me in my experience. It definitely served me because it brought me to where I am. I can understand and relate to people who, may still feel that way. And it was the driving force to become free of that suffering and to understand more deeply.
There's a question that came up from the chat box, and then after you ask this, I think we should hear from Kristen and Amalie, and we'll come back to you. But somebody just wanted to ask, what is non-duality? Could you define that, please?
Yeah, I will, as good as we can in terms, right? Language is so limited. So I will do my best, and shout out to Rupert Spira. I hope I do him justice. But basically, non-duality in the most simple terms is obviously it's not duality, right? Everything is one. The current model for most of the world is there's mind over here, and then there's matter outside of myself. I have my mind and my being within, and then outside in the world is matter. There's duality, right? There's more than one. And non-duality shows us that that's just not true. That the mind and the consciousness with which we experience our mind and we experience the world is not separate. And that the whole experience is one indivisible experience.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Look forward to hearing more from you. I want to read a couple of comments, share one thing, and then Alan, hopefully take a look at the messages I've sent you in the chat box, because I do want to make sure your microphone, we're getting pretty bad feedback when you talk.
I think I lowered it a little bit, so I think that might help.
Okay, great. Yeah, so far so good. So a couple of comments. One for you, actually. Marcia on Unify says, "Thank you, Jojo. I'm really excited to learn more about RTT and to explore you and Marissa." For you, Alan, you've got a fan, Karen Michelle on Unify writes, "I am so excited to see Alan again today. 2 times, surreptitiously. She just watched a Zoom you did with Barbara Handclough. So she's excited to be seeing you. On the non-duality question, there's a really wonderful thing that always excites me, and I love sharing this, and some of you have heard me say it before. Our most ancient spiritual teachings are the Vedic scriptures. They go back about 7,000 years. And in the Vedic scriptures, written in Sanskrit, God is called Brahman, and is assigned 26 principles. And that was written 7,000 years ago. Our most modern science, quantum physics, has assigned 26 principles to the unified field. And the 26 principles of the unified field perfectly correlate with the 26 principles of Brahman. And so I just love that, because it's like we are living in a time that our most ancient spiritual teaching and our most modern science are saying the same thing. And that is another way of looking at non-duality, that scientifically we are all part of a unified field. We had Deepak Chopra on the show recently, and he said that we will share approximately 80 to 100,000 molecules with every other being who has ever lived on the planet. Just think about that for a minute. That's how interconnected we are, right? That we share molecules so much that we have shared molecules with everyone from Jesus to Hitler. So it's pretty incredible. So that's another way of seeing non-duality. And Alan, would you like to introduce Kristen?
Yeah, one more thing I want to say though, it's Jojo and Steve have gone beyond non-duality. Oops,
Still
sorry.
getting feedback, buddy.
I
Yeah.
don't know why, but I'll just talk a little quieter. And they are taking it to the next level where they are saying, okay, how do we share that understanding and bring us up together, ascension together. This is the outgrowth of non-duality, that we're all in this together and we're here to evolve consciousness, not just be in non-duality, but do something about that and emerge as more evolved beings.
But
So
when you practice non-duality, right, when you're aware of the non-dual nature that we're a part of, you then begin to see yourself in all your fellow men. You see yourself in nature, as nature, within nature. And then you start to recognize when one raises consciousness, it raises the consciousness of the whole collective. So now I'm radically responsible for the energy I'm emitting, right? And what do I want to contribute today? Where are we going today, world? What are we doing? How are we blessing? Or how are we being a burden? It's really the only two. Like Steve said, we can have a lens of love or fear. Fear is the falsehood, it's the illusion or the veil, and love is the truth. And we want to be in the truth and share the truth so that we can get this accelerated ascension party going.
I love that. A couple of comments from our Zoom room. Now our Zoomers are beginning to interact. Connie writes, there is a way of moving beyond duality, right, wrong, good, evil, which is a huge leap. We move out of victim consciousness, understanding that we are loved by a conscious, loving universe. Absolutely. And then Melinda writes, last night I was thinking the same thing, and how compartmentalizing wisdom has possibly held us back. Last night felt more like a return to knowledge. Beautiful. Alan, do you want to introduce Kristen?
yes, thank you. Kristen also has a very dramatic, story
You know
of
what?
awakening.
Maybe
And
just talk as softly as you possibly can and turn your volume down.
Kristen has a beautiful story of her own awakening and transformation. And out of that came her passion to help others. And her new book, Heal the People, is her direct connection to Source to give back to the world. So, Kristen, please share your story and your transformation and your love for humanity.
Thank you so much for having me. First, I just want to really express my gratitude for being here. I feel really honored to share. And yeah, I think when you have a transformation that feels really remarkable, you feel almost like morally responsible to share it with others. Like when you know it can be of service to humanity. When you transcend your limitation or you alchemize your own suffering, I think it turns into a gift. Like you can show up and it kind of almost comes in a package, and you deliver it to others as sort of a source of inspiration and hope. And that's my prayer, is that my sharing my experiences can kind of uplift others and also empower them to realize that they are creators, that our perception can create our reality. And when we perceive ourselves, kind of like Steve said, when we perceive ourselves as limited and separate, we can feel really small and disempowered and feeling, like you said too, kind of like a victim to life circumstance. But that little shift in consciousness, that empowerment of like, my consciousness is having an impact on my experience of reality and my experience of life, that shift in consciousness is enough to change a life. And then it's like this beautiful ripple effect, and you connect, you start resonating with other people of like mind and like heart and like mission. And if enough of us, I really truly believe in my heart that if enough of us have that shift in perception from separation, from limitation, into this unified consciousness, the effects that we will see take place in our material world will be like, we can't even envision them at this point. So it really, I feel really passionate about helping people awaken and heal and transform, because as we do it individually, we do it collectively, because we're not separate beings, we are one consciousness. So I'm very passionate about the work.
Well, talk about your own, thank you for that. Beautiful. Talk about your own process. Like, if you wanted to talk about specifics, that would be great because it's very powerful, your story.
Yeah, so I think, okay, so it's such a broad, it's a broad umbrella of awakening. But my personal experience was, I think the core trauma that I experienced was separation from spirit. What I've discovered is that I'm a very spiritual entity, and I feel whole and complete when I feel connected to a cosmic intelligence that is loving. And when I came into the human experience, like everyone who lives in a body, you experience yourself as separate, and that can be incredibly painful if you don't have like minds and like hearts that are also spiritual. And so I spent the first half of my earthly journey trying desperately to get back to spirit, but in ways that may not have been beneficial to my body. So I fell into the trap of addiction as well. And I didn't realize why. I was using substances outside of myself to try to facilitate the state of consciousness that I now recognize as love. I just was going about the tactic in the wrong way. And so but then that seeking led me to spirituality. So I experienced addiction as an opportunity to awaken, right? So that suffering that addiction ended up causing led me to look for personal growth and self-help and spirituality. And that's when I started to remember, right? The process of awakening for me was really remembering my soul. And I found a beautiful healing school. For the first time in my life, I was plugged in with like minds and like hearts and spiritual people. And I was in my early 20s, and that community gave me this sense of belonging in the world. And as soon as I felt that sense of belonging, then I started to embody and feel safe enough here, because I had a tribe of spiritual people. So and my soul was like, okay, you can come down now. Like, you can really anchor into this human experience, and you can heal, and then you can be of service. So I see it as all part of this grand design. Is a lot of times suffering comes to wake us up. As soon as we accept it and we can use it as fuel for growth, then it serves us. It was part of the awakening, I guess.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
One more thing about Kristen, I think is interesting, is her passion to now help people in your book, how that emerged. Just talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, that was probably the most profound experience of my life. I journeyed with a plant medicine, a very powerful plant medicine called iboga, and that's what I used to overcome an opiate addiction. And when I did iboga, I had a vision, and this was 10 years ago. I had a profound vision of the cover of a book, and the book spelled out, first it just said HTP. And what's interesting is the healing school that I was in was called the Healer Training Program, and we called it HTP. But the book didn't spell out Healer Training Program. When the vision of the book formed, it spelled out Heal the People. And this crowd appeared around the book, and everybody was chanting, heal the people, so loud that I sat up and I opened my eyes and I looked at the provider and I said, I think I just saw a book I'm supposed to write. And I spent the past 10 years figuring out what that means. Like, what does it mean to heal people? What does it mean to expand our consciousness? And it really became like a life mission to like live into that question. What is healing? What is awakening? What is all this? And then I guess the book was kind of the full circle of like, here's what I've learned along the way that really changed my life, because my life went from chaos and disorder and suffering to like beauty and bliss and expanded consciousness and love and like wonderful relationships and friendships like Alan and Jojo and Steve and these incredible people that share a mission that comes from something greater than the human. It comes like in through the heart and you feel it, and it's just incredibly it's life-changing information. So
Alan had referenced earlier Marshall Rosenberg, and I had the good fortune to travel and teach and work with Marshall, did TV shows with him. And my favorite quote, and it's really what you're talking about here, Kristen, from Marshall, is the greatest joy in life is contributing to the well-being of others. And then I've added my own thought, which is the greatest tragedy in life is people who don't know that.
So true.
Because it's like once you discover that, it's like, oh, it's what you're talking about. It's the state that you're in, right? Of being of service. But people who don't know that and are still seeking for the external world for that gratification. If my wife has to treat me a certain way, my job has to work out, I've got to, they're still looking outside. And of course, it's endless, I also, one last thing, and then I really do want to introduce Amelie, but I want to acknowledge your evolution as it relates to substances. And certainly so many of us who are listening or watching have had a relationship to substances. And look, we get high because it feels good initially, right? That first high, working with heroin addicts, is that adage that everyone's trying to recapture that first high, right? And so it's difficult because we have an experience, whether it's from any substance or any intoxication, and the pleasure center of the brain loves it. And we have now this memory of that pleasure. And so then there becomes the compulsion to seek to recreate that pleasure through the substance. And really learning to transition out of turning to the substance, but finding a more holistic, sustainable way is a journey that it sounds like you've been on. So I just want to ask you if there's anything you'd like to add to that way of thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's a state of consciousness that you're seeking. It's that that evolution beyond your limited human self. Like you're seeking that. For me, it's like the high of feeling connected to spirit, to something greater than my human, and I think that's what we're all seeking, and we're just seeking it in different ways. And one of my favorite authors, David Hawkins, says something along those lines, is what the addict is seeking is not to be ashamed of. Basically, he says, change your tactic, not your aspiration. Because like all spiritual seekers we're all searching for that feeling, that unified connection, but you can get there. You can get there in other ways that are really not harmful to the body, and they're beneficial to all of humanity. Because what happens is you start to broadcast a frequency, right? Breath work and meditation. And for me, it's Sangha, spiritual community, like gathering with people of like mind and having conversations that make your heart feel open and expanded and grateful. It's like, this is what has evolved out of spiritual disciplines, yoga, juicing, taking really good care of my body, like really nourishing it. And Jojo had said it too, like you start to see yourself as the planet. Like when you're consuming from the planet, there's this symbiotic relationship that we have with earth and with spirit and with humans. And for me, it's just this holistic high, and it feels it's clean and it's pure, and it feels like everything I was seeking before, I just didn't know I was seeking it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
A last question for you. And while she's answering, Alan, can you please respond to me in the chat box? Um, Andrew Smith Lewis writes a question for you. Is there a difference in your mind between pleasure seeking with substances and spiritual seeking through plant medicine?
I think that people they can easily get caught in the trap of still seeking outside of themselves for answers. So I consider plant medicine as medicine. Like, I did iboga once, and I do not, like, I got the medicine. So I don't consistently go back and revisit it. It anything we can overdo anything, So this is where sort of like really being tuned into your own consciousness is really important, is because you can check in with yourself and say, is this an avoidant behavior? What are my intentions? We have to be really aware of why we do what we do, and really be self-aware, because being in a body, being human, having an ego is very tricky. And so, yeah, I do think that some people absolutely will use plant medicines to escape or to seek pleasure. But it's really human involvement. And that comes down to expanding our consciousness and asking, why do I do what I do? Why do I think the way I think? Why am I the way that I am?
Beautiful. Thank you, Kristen. It's so nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you.
Wonderful,
Thank you.
wonderful energy. And of course, we'll be hearing from Kristen and Jojo and Steve again in a little bit. But I am now going to bring on Amelie Grace. And I'm really, really happy. To be honest, I had heard, as I had said, from Pramagaya, and then I saw that she's teaching a really juicy looking course. Like, I want to take this course, and we'll talk about it, a little bit later in the show. But for those of you who do not know Amelie, she has spent 15 years synthesizing experience in Western astrology and the gene keys with her own studies in Jungian psychology, interpersonal neurobiology, complexity science, and cosmometry. Wow! She brings innovative approaches to awakening consciousness. I mean, that's what this whole weekend is about. And applying her whole system's mind and love for the theater of life. Isn't that a great expression, the theater of life? So she applies all of this to the theater of life and to the internal world of the self. Amelie is all about supporting people to cultivate conscious relationships with their inner archetypal landscape and become conductors of their personal reality. That is exactly what this whole weekend is about. So I'm so glad you're with us. And I guess maybe, as we've asked all of our previous guests, maybe you can share an example of how you work with maybe one of your archetypal ways of experiencing life to change your life or to transform something in your life.
Yeah, that's a great prompt. And thank you for having me on the show. It's so good to meet all of you.
Amelie, you're having a similar thing to Alan. If you could turn your overall volume down.
Yes,
your volume level is really high.
Yes, let me. How is this?
That
Sounding better?
Yeah, now it's a little too soft.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That sounds just about right.
Okay. Let me know if it needs to be adjusted.
Okay.
Just honoring each of you that are all here and the listeners. I'm so glad that you brought in that inquiry into the meditation, Scott, with the remember a moment when it all kind of changed. And I was brought back to actually just a few years ago. I've been on the path for a long time, but I think that as a seeker, like speaking of this whole seeking thing, I had access to the higher orders of reality in these very sharp peaks and then drops. And it was this like, my higher self, and like trying to deal with my psyche, trying to cut out the parts of self that were just keeping reality being hard. And just a few years ago, I started a training called Voice Dialogue. And in that training, one of the first things my teacher said is, you know, those parts of you that like dominate and control, or like, you know, are super rigid or totally escape, and just all those parts that you're dealing with in this practice, we're not trying to get rid of any of those parts. We're just making a relationship to them. And it was just like, wait. And my mind tried to figure out a way around that. Like, wait, of course, we're trying to get rid of them. We don't want them to be, oh, right. We just don't want them driving the ship. And inside of a Cartesian reductionist paradigm of duality, of separating ourselves out from life, we don't have the operating system to be able to actually have a relationship to all the different parts of ourself in a way that allows them to sing their true song, to have their motivating need be met. It was just, so for me, it was a really big aha of like, oh, this whole transformation thing is actually about starting to create a bridge. And this kind of bridges into the conversation today about quantum healing. I'm really interested in the doorway that opens between the non-local quantum higher orders of reality that are really the field of all possibility, and how to create a doorway into the localized environments of mental models and programs and ways that we've totally become, you know, learned inside of these ways of being. And that it's actually not about just transcending into that next place and woo, there we are. It's actually about integrating it into matter, because the paradigm previous to it is basically, it's mimicking cancerous programs where it detaches itself from the body of nature and then duplicates itself without reference to the reality in which it's embedded, which is this ordered perfection of the cosmos, of nature. And so part of this process is about embodiment, coming back to living into reality with the quantum right here with us, and allowing it to inform our matter, and then walk in a way that is really quite emergent, because it hasn't happened yet. And we're all getting to sort of crest this wave into newness in our own beings, our relationships, and in our world. So I think that that's sort of a bit of, it's like a little bit of my story, but it's also just giving you a sense of how I'm seeing the world and the ways that I'm interested in forming these new relationships to the parts of ourselves, so that we can have greater range of mobility inside of our worlds and reality.
Let's just all breathe that in. And that, you express yourself in such a beautiful theatrical way. I want to read a comment, and then I want to say something and ask you. But Connie writes, "Yay, Amelie! We came here on Earth in this life walk with an overarching act of free will to go on our journey to wholeness, self-love, self-acceptance, alignment with our divinity and purpose. We gave permission to the loving universe, so everything in our lives happens for us, not to us, absolutely. This is in a perspective that is, again, beyond duality, beyond victim, perpetrator, good, evil. It's a big leap and a big flip from victim to beloved." Beautifully stated, Connie. Beautifully. When you were talking about your voice dialogue work, I got especially excited because as a coach, I do a lot of, I call it sub-personality work. And for people listening, to kind of make this how you can apply it to your lives, I'm going to share one way that I do it, and then I want to ask you a way that you do it.
Yeah.
I like to, as I work with my clients, help them identify the different parts of themselves and imagine that the you that I'm working with, the primary you, is the loving parent of all the children at the table. And we're all sitting at the dining room table, and each child has their own unique being. And all those little children inside of you. There's your inner child, your rebellious teenager, your authoritarian adult, whatever it is, the different subpersonalities that have formed. And my observation is usually these subpersonalities form when we're having a very significant moment in our life. Either something really wonderful or something very traumatic is when these particular beings within us come out. Now, we were talking earlier with Kristen and Jojo and Steve about substances, and very often are the parts of ourselves that we stuff because we have shame. Shame about my horny teenager, shame about my authoritative adult, shame about the part of me that just wants to get high all the time. Whatever it is, we stuff it, and then it gets stuff in the shadow. And so much of voice dialogue work, as I understand it, and subpersonality work as I teach it, is just bringing all these parts of ourselves out of the shadows, so that, again, we're loving all the parts of ourselves. So I know I said a lot and I wasn't going to, but I got really excited. And I'd love to kind of hear like your take and how you work with those elements in your voice dialogue work.
Yeah, it's really useful information. So very similarly, we work with the parts of self, understanding that you are not your parts. You are something greater than that. And so there's this central seat in the middle that in voice dialogue, they call the aware ego. And I like to call it the conductor. It's also it's equivalent to the 0 point. It's the unified field, really. And so what we do in the work is we scoot our chairs over and we move into the energy of a subpersonality, and we see through its lenses. We get the filtration of reality. We understand its perspective and why it's doing what it's doing, when it originated, what it's protecting. And then we come back and we have the experience of leaving that self where it was, still connected, but now I'm sitting in the 0 point, and now I actually have a different view. What's different here? What feels different in my body? And so then we go to an opposite side. And this is where the work gets really juicy to me, because I love polarities. And it's really all about holding the tension of opposites. And then if you do that through the psyche, like these, if you think about, the zodiac has 12 different archetypes. The 64 gene keys have 64 different archetypes, the feminine and the masculine version of those. You take different parts of self and you hold them in the tension because you're sitting in the middle, and you're able to actually bring consciousness and work them in a different way, modulate, dial them down if needed. Now you are conducting reality at a completely different level. And I think this is where we get to experience ourselves as creators, and it's pretty fun.
Awesome. I think Alan has a question for you.
I love what you're saying. Sorry, I'm going to talk
super loud. You know what? Do you
I'm
want
going
to
to talk very low, very low.
That works.
I think I saw Jojo smiling and wonder how it relates to RTT, what Amelie was saying.
Yes, I resonate with so much. I mean, in my terms, I call it shadow work, where we're just finding the parts of the younger selves that are connected to the presenting problem, isolating what the job of depression was, the role, the function, the purpose of depression or addiction or Crohn's disease or back pain or whatever the presenting issue is, it's serving in some way. And then we kind of bring it to the table for tea and love on it and see it and recognize it, because it's been so neglected and avoided and made to feel angst against for so long. No wonder it's manifesting in dysfunctional, inflamed ways and causing dis-ease in the body. And we're just professing that through maladaptive behavior or illness. So I love what you're presenting because it's so many faces and languages, like these religions of the world. It's sourced through faces and languages that need to meet certain demographics and populations. We're all sharing the same thing. We're just meeting different people where they're at.
I'm bringing Kristen on. So we've got all of our 4 presenters, and now I'm going to bring in questions from the audience. And Shobhan on Unify asks, okay, so I'm woke, but I'm struggling because of outside forces like my blood family. How do I love them while blocking their negativity out so it quits tripping me up and causing me to have self-doubt? So there's that question, and I'll add to it anything that any of you want to add about how we work with epigenetics. How do we work with our genetic ancestry? Go ahead, Kristen.
I would love to speak to that. My question would be, how connected do you feel to your own tribe? Not necessarily the blood tribe of your origins, but do you have a foundational element of, supportive friend circle or spiritual community? Because having that solid framework, then it almost gives you density that normally the tribe will provide. It's almost like a chosen tribe. And then you can, what I've found is that I could hold space for the tribe of my origins and sort of like love them without needing to be defined, because I found a sense of belonging tribally to a spiritual community or people who resonated with sort of like my beliefs and behaviors. And so I think tribe is so important to humans. We're pack, we have pack instincts. So it can create a lot of friction if you're trying to fit yourself into a tribe that doesn't align with your personal code of honor or code of ethics. So do you have a tribe other than family?
Beautiful. Good response. Amelie, Jojo, Steve, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I can jump in here. I like to see that everything that is coming up in my life is here to nourish me. And I know it's quite a bold statement to make, but a lot of the work with the Gene Keys is about going to the shadow, and the things that are arising are here to reveal and give you a lesson. So how is self-doubt teaching you? And part of what I experience in my own shadow work is that when I actually meet it, when I go right to it, feel the feeling, let it move through my body, actually listen to it, it has something for me. It has a piece of gold, and I tend to then get to the root place of where I need to be my own backbone in that case, or really stand up for myself in a new way. And it's layers and layers and layers of this. It is an ongoing process.
I'm going to bring all 3 of you, or all 4 of you on again. So when we were reading what Connie wrote a little bit earlier, and Connie just wrote, by the way, yes, Kristen, perfectly stated. The shadow work is totally key. If these relationships trigger us, it means it's work we have to do to love aspects of ourselves that we don't love yet. So how do the 4 of you relate to the idea that we are multidimensional beings having a human experience, primarily to learn lessons of love? And how do you perceive finding that balance of fully enjoying and honoring the animal body, as well as that part of us that wants to go back to the multidimensional higher conscious self, or as Amelie called, I like that, the conductor. So there's that part of us that wants to, get up and be expansive and be spiritual and all that. But where does honoring the animal body and our animal body cravings fit into this for the 4 of you? Amelie, you got to say something based on response there.
I'm just like, oh, I love this question because the animal body is imprinted with the same divine blueprint. The animal body is divine. Fear has been a fuel source for us. Our survival instincts that are more animal have been a fuel source for evolution. It's a fuel source that has become non-renewable. Now we're evolving out of fear as our fuel source, and now love needs to, and all the other ways that we can source ourselves. I don't want to speak too long, but what I do want to say is that if we experience one without the other, it's not wholeness. So where do we actually find ourselves doing this? And so I want to pass it to these other folks though, because I'm curious if anyone has anything else to say.
Am I on? Yeah. I've found I got tripped up with that over the years because, like I said, the first 30 years I was very uncomfortable and I felt unhappy. Then as I found what was working for me, I did a completely 180 where it felt like I was only suffering and miserable for so long. Then I found I was completely free and I could have and do anything I wanted, and I did that for like 12, 13 years. But I took that to an extreme, and ended up doing heroin because I thought, hey, why not? You know what I mean? I could do anything I want. I have nothing to fear. And I was suppressing some other stuff. But regardless, I now, what I do now is really just go with the moment. If something's offered me, I mean, I'm not going to do heroin again. But if something is presented, a lover, a meal, an experience that I've feel drawn to in the moment, then I'll do it, but I don't, for me personally, maybe as a result of my experiences, I couldn't even tell you something I'm looking forward to or craving. I really very rarely feel cravings or desires outside of what's happening right now. So as I feel like they come to me, with that which I would probably enjoy most comes to me, and then I will enjoy it, but in moderation as well, even with, all different pleasures.
We've got some really good questions coming in. So I, as much as I love the animal body and I love my animal body, I want to get to some of these other questions. This one's a really touching one. From Unify Marseille writes, I have a son who has been struggling because of a traumatic incident when he was 19, which led to him being incarcerated for 7 years. Since it came out, he fell into addiction and extreme maladaptive behaviors that have kept him returning to the punitive system, which doesn't address the healing work at all. How can I best serve him? Of course, I've been greatly affected, and the expense of these modalities and all of this is very overwhelming. So thank you for sharing that. As a mother, I can only imagine how heartbreaking that must be. Do any of you have a response?
When I work with families within the addiction realm, it always is, how can I do this better for them? How can I serve them? What resources can I get for them? And the lack of attention to the person who wants to show up for them is tremendous. The lack of self-care, the lack of finding peace. There's a program called Al-Anon that talks about loving detachment almost, where the number one thing we can do for a loved one in addiction is be supportive and loving without judgment. And it's so hard because we want to get offended and we want to make it about us and we want to get hurt. Why wasn't my mom able to take care of me? You know, I don't have one memory of her giving me a bath or making me a meal. But it wasn't about me. It was about her struggle and her illness. So once I was able to separate the ego out of this relationship and just open my heart to another human being who was struggling with something, it changed the dynamics of that relationship. And I did have 3 months with her before she overdosed, a 3-month window when I got out of jail and she overdosed and passed. And it was 3 months of a completely different relationship we'd ever had prior, because I just wanted to love her and help her and not judge her. And the quality of the relationship, even within her disease and mental illness, was worth a lifetime of what we could have done before and the memories we had created using together, or, you know, playing backgammon. And like I would take those 3 months over all that other stuff when the ego was so attached. So truly, I know from firsthand experience, it's really hard not to worry about someone who is putting their life at harm, who is at risk every day. But if we can remove the judgment and just see them as a child of God, exactly where they are within their own divine design on their own ascension path, and support their path without judgment and just love them. How can I love them today should be the question. How can I bless them today? Not go into my wallet, you know, not go into the Venmo app, not talk to 10 different treatment centers for the 10 millionth time. And when we start to connect with the heart center in any of this, we're leading with love, and source will bring in what's needed to fulfill and bring that peace to you. Whether it's your time for the child or the parent or the spouse, for that divinity to flow in as well, that's not up to us. I say, I show up in love, and that's up to the Holy Spirit and that person. I don't have control over it. I'm not micromanaging their path. I just am supposed to keep my side of the street clean and love.
Beautiful answer. And there's so many questions now coming in, so I'm going to go on to the next one, but thank you for that. And, you know, what I'm hearing is coming back to self, when sometimes our addiction is trying to help or change another person, right? That can become an addictive compulsion. It can become a compulsion to, you know, do that, you know, out of love, you know, and it's, so I really love what you had to say. That's beautiful.
I just want to share, Scott, that I feel all these people, all 4 of these beautiful people are just sharing love. They're just giving something they found inside of them and wanting to spread it to the world. That's ascension together. That's heal the people. That's all that we're trying to do, Scott, for the last 112 weeks. That's all you've been trying to do. And you've done it. So thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, we've got some really good questions. This one's, I love this one, from Melinda. Has anyone ever been brought to the higher path through comfort? Or has it always been through healing and coming out of suffering? So I think that's a really good question. Anybody want to tackle that? Steve.
I don't know who has, but I do feel that my personal evolution started once I started, the journey has been mostly pleasurable and comfortable. You know, there was that initial hump, if you will, to get, there was an initiation, if you will. But from then on, I've been feeling like I've been experiencing what the Course calls the happy dream. So I have also allowed myself to be very comfortable and enjoy pleasurable activities and things like this. And my personal evolution has grown, developed, deepened in a sense, in a place from comfort and love. And one thing I want to throw out there about I had started with the animal body thing. I feel as though as we feel more whole ourselves, we feel less and less sense of lack. And so when there's less and less sense of lack, there's less and less sense of craving or feeling without. And that's where I was going with that. I didn't mean to imply that I'm something different or special, that pleasure finds me. It's, I believe the opposite. I believe that when you feel full and fulfilled, everything can be serving that pleasure center, or what the experience that you're drawn to or drawing you in will be good or be desirable to the animal body thing.
Beautiful. By the way, the mother that we had, Amelie, go ahead.
Well, I just have a couple things to say on this. Is there time for that?
Go for it.
Okay. I just want to acknowledge, there's been traditions throughout history that have been more pleasure, all the tantras and the hermetic alchemical traditions and even hedonic, just like there's so many traditions that have gone that route. And I think that we're in the age of synthesis. We're at a time just similar to what many of us have been saying, that it's just not all at once, all the time. It's not any one thing. To me, one of the core needs to the human psyche is comfort. And we develop that from about 1.5 months or 2 to about 4 or 5. And this is secure attachment. This is our nervous system actually knowing how to self-soothe and internalize the mother, father, and like nurture ourselves. So comfort, if we're talking about comfort as a way to smooth out our nervous system and come back to a secure attachment to our bodies and to earth, it totally plays a role.
Beautiful.
I just want to say one thing is that this is a schoolhouse. Earth is a place for learning, and on a soul level, we can choose those hard experiences because we want to learn the totality of the human experience. So we're here to learn it all and raise ourselves up because our true state is joy. But the soul chooses to say, I want to know what that feels like, or what density, or forgetting. And so that's the process of ascension, of incarnation. And then when you get it, the natural state is just bliss. It's just samadhi. So that's what I want to say.
Our mother that you responded to has written back. Thank you so very, very much. I do that most of the time. Because I'm a healer and committed to healing, I so want him to have access to higher avenues of support. And I do believe that Source will direct. This is my prayer since the beginning. Again, thank you. And then she does add a P.S. I do believe in tribal communities, and I do believe that if we were in tribal communities, we would never isolate or create a boundary that mirrors any form of exclusion. I feel that people don't understand what the prison system does to the humanity of a person. The whole system of punishment it's horrific. There's a question from Darina, which I want to put forward to all of you. And it is, I had it here a moment ago. It's all about just your thoughts on quantum healing. Now that quantum healing has made it into the mainstream, what is quantum healing and how do we access it?
The reason I called this a quantum week was specifically for Kristen's inspiration for the shop she runs. And she had a specific idea about quantum wellness. So that's
Take it away, Kristen. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to speak to this. I feel like quantum healing comes down to this infinite source of creative potential around us, and sort of like if we spend all of our time focused in survival, like just focus on limitation, the body's desires for, gratification and pleasure and power. And that's kind of how we've been conditioned. We limit ourselves to this source of infinite healing that comes when we tap into higher consciousness. So the quantum healing for me is learning where to place my energy, like where to place my focus. And this actually I wanted to kind of loop back into that original question about, do we all have to suffer to awaken, or can we awaken in joy? And I think a part of the suffering comes from, incarnating into a body and sort of forgetting our connection to the quantum field. Is sort of like all of our focus gets kind of like limited to, it's okay, I got to survive, I've got to learn how to navigate being in a body. It really requires a lot of our attention at first. But then what can happen is we start to protect ourselves by focusing on the body, because we try to limit ourselves from experiencing pain. So we can get caught up in that trap of like, oh, certain things feel bad, and we build these energetic armor, like body armoring, to defend ourselves from painful experiences. And usually we don't just willingly decide to drop those defenses unless something is sort of like creating, like unless there's some kind of sandpaper experience in our life that's causing us to go, oh, I got to look at that. That's, it's like, so it's almost like, I think it comes to wake us up. But once we get it, sort of like Steve said too, like once you get it, once you get that initial awakening, it doesn't have to always be so abrasive, because usually you get the message sooner and sooner. And then you can start to refocus your energy on the quantum realm. Because I believe that, like, when you come into a body, you come in as quantum consciousness, and you are limitless. You don't even know that you have a boundary or a barrier until you're like, 18 months, like 3 years old, you start to realize that you're separate and you're powerful and you have this desires to act as an individual. But prior to that, you are pure consciousness. You are unlimited, but you're also undefended. So it's like this integration process of really like learning how to human, but how to integrate the quantum consciousness into your human, how to bring more of that down onto the planet. And I think that's what this shift from separation into love is all about. And I think Amma had mentioned that as well, like really integrating, like really using your human to connect with the cosmic and bringing heaven down to earth.
Beautiful. Well, since we've got the spotlight on you and we're talking about this, let's learn a little bit about how people can work with you. And this is her website. It's quantumhw.com. quantumhw.com. Tell us more about your work and how people can connect with you.
Yes. So we have a brick and mortar business where we host all sorts of offerings for, meditations and group work and just wonderful services, trainings. And so I do a lot of work in person, but people can always just reach out to me through the website. I can work with people through Zoom, helping people understand how they manage their energy to manage their life. That's really kind of like my focus, is helping people understand, how do I direct my consciousness so I can go from this world of cause and effect to causing an effect, right? Do we want to always be absorbing the world around us, or do we want to broadcast and cause an effect on the world around us? And so, yeah, that's kind of what we do with quantum, and helping people understand that your consciousness is creative. Where you place your consciousness, how you move your energy, is how you create your life. We are all creative beings. We just have to bring that creative potential into awareness so we can direct it with our intention, as opposed to our unconscious need for self-protection. So I love working with people and helping them, because I think as soon as people get it, then they become these powerful elements of change in the world. They bring more peace. The shift happens through humans. It happens when we take the quantum and we integrate it onto the planet. That can only happen through conscious human beings.
Where's your
Also,
store?
you've also written a wonderful book, Heal the People, which you've referenced. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, so The book it's like my baby. It took me 10 years to really synthesize all of this information. And so it's I call it like a map for how to human on every level of consciousness, sort of like we talked about earlier, the body consciousness, like the body and its desires for pleasure and power, but also these higher human ideals, compassion and creativity and forgiveness, and also insight, psychic, and a connection to a divine source that is higher than our human. So I use the chakra system as a kind of a map, and then there's also personality profiling laid out in the book as well, as sort of how do different types of people manage their energy in order to feel safe. So what I've learned is that there's 5 distinct energy patterns that people will do in order to create a feeling of safety. So, and we usually develop these really early on, and we do them so often that they become unconscious. But when we make them conscious, then we can decide how do we want to move our energy. So for example, some people, when they feel unsafe, they will move their energy up and out of their body to try to establish a sense of safety. But on the planet, that's not really useful because now you're kind of this disembodied human, you're really dissociated from reality, and you're not really capable of transforming the world in a powerful way. So that person might need to learn when they're overwhelmed, how do I stay present? How do I just breathe? How do I reconnect? Someone else, when they feel overwhelmed, they might explode their energy to try to be the biggest force in the room in order to scare other people so they feel safe and in control, right? And so there's 5 distinct ways that we move our energy when we feel overwhelmed. And the key is to become conscious of how we do that so we can stop doing it unconsciously and we can become integrated humans. And so it's all, like I said, Heal the People is a map for how to move our energy so we can become powerful elements of change in a world that desperately needs fully embodied spiritual beings who resonate at the frequency of love.
Beautiful. Well, everybody, you can get Heal the People, as you can see, on Amazon by Kristen Johnston. There's a T in there, Johnston. And Kristen, I'm imagining anybody who works with you is blessed to do so. You really have the heart of an angel. Really, all of you, as Alan said, all of you are beautiful.
I just want to tell people where your store is in Massachusetts so people can find you.
Yeah, so we're in Seekonk, Massachusetts. We're about 20 minutes from Providence, about 45 minutes from Boston. So yeah.
We are in that time where I need to go to everybody for a final thought and learn about what they do. So I'm putting the spotlight on you, Jojo and Steve. And I would love for you to tell us about the work that you do, Ascension Together. And that's the name of their website. We're going to go take a look at it. It's ascensiontogether.org. From fractured to fullness. Beautiful. So, and I guess this is where also people who want to get a discovery call with you, Jojo, can do that. Just schedule the discovery call here. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and I'm going to go to your events page and tell us more about how people can play with you and connect with you.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, RTT discovery calls are always free. They're about 15, 20-minute consultations to introduce someone who's interested into what RTT is, what it entails, and for me also to vet out if the person is a good fit for RTT at the time. At the bottom of the pages, you can also subscribe to our newsletter, probably sending out 1 to 2 newsletters a week, depending on what events or new classes are happening. And the classes and events are every 8 weeks. So right now we just started Experience in A Course in Miracles, and it's an 8-week course. The Sunday after Easter, the new Miracle Minded Forgiveness Masterclass starts. And that's really a curriculum we curated ourselves that slowly integrate the teachings of A Course in Miracles, non-duality, meditating from awareness, from a point of observation, Observing, not absorbing is a great way to put it. I love that term. And really a wonderful primer to start to expand the consciousness around oneness, quantum field, the divinity within all of us, to help people recognize it. And then how do we honor it? So kind of, I would say, like I have an event at Kristen's store next Saturday, and a group RTT called Step Into Your Power. So that event is all about removing any blocks to your sovereignty, to your limitedness. And then the reprogramming of that RTT session is stepping into power, claiming your divinity, and recognizing your wholeness. I love to collaborate with Kristen. I try to have all our events at Kristen's, because you walk in and you just take this, exhale, and then you breathe in love. And then you're like, oh, home and family. And I felt that from the moment I walked in there. And us getting together was divine design, because I was looking for an event for Alan's. I was looking for a venue for Alan's event. And I Googled, venue, Providence. And the first listing on Google that caught my eye was Quantum Health and Wellness. I was attracted to the flower of life symbol because of my own history with it. And I reached out right away. They got back to me within an hour. And it was just, that's like when it's green light, it's flow. It's like when Steve is saying things will come to us. We don't have to chase. We don't have to manipulate or control. What is to be will be, and it will find us. So events, classes, RTT, you can all find it at ascensiontogether.org.
Thank all three of you. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's great to meet new people. That's one of my favorite parts of this job, is I get to meet really cool people like you. So
Good. I'm glad you like my friends, Scott.
Your friends rock, Alan.
But also, I want to say Jojo, Steve, Kristen, and I are planning to do a workshop retreat somewhere in July, where we can go and live the experience, that quantum reality. So I guess they can email Ascension Together and if you're interested in that.
Well, without a doubt, without a doubt, when that's happening, we'll promote it on our shows. I'll let everybody know about that. I'll be there, hopefully. So.
Okay.
Scott, for me, I feel like it sums up, at least for me in my experience, coming from a place of love, recognizing that you are safe, whole, and healed every moment at all times. And when you come from a place of love, when your perspective is coming from a place of love and wholeness, everything else takes care of itself. Everything is seen in that tint, through that perspective of love. The whole world is in your consciousness, and you get to pick the lens with which you experience it.
Beautifully stated. I mean, that's like a perfect summary statement. But we cannot summarize, because we still got to go to Amelie and hear about what she's offering. And, I mentioned before that in my email, I'm on her email list, and I saw this course that you're doing. Honestly, I swear to you, I would take it myself, only I teach an empathy practice group also on Wednesday nights. But this looks fantastic, and I love how you've put it all together. So tell us about the course.
Well, it's similar to Kristen. It's like a 10-year baby. I've literally had this on my list to create for a long time, but it just wasn't ready. So this is a self-cultivation training and mastermind, where it's about coming together in a group of people who are all wanting to develop their craft of self-development and self-growth, and really evolving our ability to evolve. And one of the things that the basis of it's called Living Symbol. And if you would pull up the image, either of the one you just had on or of the one I sent you, Living Symbol is basically in this course, we're going to be mapping our psyche and working with 3 core sets of opposites in our psyche. And these maps are basically, these models have been coming through, and I draw and make sense of all the things I'm learning and synthesizing go into models that really mirror the structure of substrate realities and hold a grid of archetypal information. So it's a synthesis of science and psychology and archetypal understanding, attuning to our own internal structure, but working with embodiment practices and exercises and really masterminding with each other. So weaving our insights and lessons in a synergized field so that we're all together in it. So that diagram that you see is sort of the map of the modules. And it's, if you see, there's a sine wave kind of moving through the very center, and it's moving from new moon to first quarter to full moon, third quarter, and then a new moon again. And every module has a symbol that we're working with that will be a template that will, come to, learn very key teachings and practices that work sequentially in order to then come to the final module of wholeness. Once again, starting with wholeness and ending with wholeness. So I'm so excited because as I feel like I'm learning, as I've developed this course, I'm getting so much information just by the symbols that and how they're placed and all the pieces of the things I've learned over these 15 years are all finding their place. So I'm just really excited to hold this space and welcome those who feel resonant in. The first session's on April 20th, so registration is open.
Beautiful. And if people want more information, how do they do that? Like, do they email you? Do you set up little consultations? How do you handle that?
Yeah, so I mean, go to that website. If we can put that the link to that in the chat. This website will have access to register. And if you had any questions, I would say, yeah, email me, and my email's on my website, and you can sign up and chat me even on my website. I'll just pop it in the, do you have my website?
Yeah.
HomiliGrace.com.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
go
so,
there. Give me
so
about
find me
60
there.
seconds. And
Yeah, if you have
pull it up.
questions, you can just go there.
There it is. What is life? Liberating essence. There it is. Give me a second. I've got it pulled up.
Yeah.
There we go. There she is.
So this is under construction. It's my old website, but you can chat me there or send me an email and just find me if you have questions about the course or any of my other work.
So there it is. You just click where it says "Let's chat," and there it is. There's some really beautiful stuff here too. Life is art. Sometime I definitely want to do a whole show on the gene keys. So I'll definitely make sure that we invite you for that one for sure.
Be fun.
All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and bring everybody back on for kind of a chance to say goodbye and thank you. Boy, this has gone by really fast. And I want to just thank everybody. Alan, do you want us to, of course, you've got your wonderful book, Making Contact, and we've done entire shows on Alan's book. And it really is such an important book that all these wonderful speakers that you've seen on our shows talk, have chapters. Like last time we had Caroline Cory, who wrote a chapter in the book. So everyone, if you don't have it already, go to Amazon and get Making Contact. Get Making Contact and get Heal the People, Kristen's books. Get those. And remember, since we're talking about Amazon, I want to do a quick pitch that you can support the Global Peace Tribe by, I pulled it up, Amazon Smile. We have a connection with them. We work with Unify. A lot of you right now are watching us on Unify. And so if you don't know about the Amazon Smile program, any of you buy on Amazon, sign up for the Amazon Smile program. It doesn't cost you anything, but a percentage of everything you buy goes to the organization you choose, and I know you're going to want to choose Unify the World, because then that comes to us. So, and you can also use the Amazon Smile link. You only got to sign up once, and then every time you just go to Amazon Smile, place your order, and right away start by ordering Alan's book and Kristen's book, and we'll get a dime or whatever. Anything you want to say, Alan, to conclude?
Yes, it's been a beautiful weekend. There were a few bumps, but that's how it goes. But what I think we brought out is this deeper love that everyone has to connect, for wisdom, and that what my book also says is that we are at a point of evolution. We are at a threshold of becoming a new race, a new people connected to the cosmos, not separate from anything. I say in my book, life is not an anomaly. Life is an emergent property of creation, and we do not live in a dead universe. We live in a universe full of consciousness, life, abundance, and joy. And that's our destiny for incarnating here into these forms. It's to make contact with all of creation and move into this expanded sense of ourselves, because everyone I look at is myself, and I want to take care of them. I want to be loved, and I want to love. And this is a new humanity we are creating. An awakened world is a doorway into that, making contact, new reality, ascension together, heal the people, all those shapes that Amelie is giving. Let's recognize who we are and the importance of this, and let's make that breakthrough into the mainstream, because people desperately need what we've been discussing here this weekend, I think, Scott, and they're ready for it. So
Thank you,
thank
Alan.
you for being a
Two
part
last
of
things. I want to just invite everybody in our Zoom room. In a moment, I'm going to close by going to gallery view. So turn on your cameras. And thank you, Eleanor, Melinda, Roger, Mannion, Lori, and Connie, for having your cameras on. And Mark, and Wanda, and Wendy. So great. So turn on your cameras. And before I go to the cameras, I do want to invite everybody. Next weekend, it's our big anniversary weekend. That we are starting the third year of doing the shows. We've done 111 weeks, and it is amazing. A lot of our favorite luminaries are coming back to be with us live. We'd have Marianne Williamson next Saturday night. Reverend Michael Beckwith will be on the Friday night show. Grandmother Flor de Mayo, Neil Donald Walsh, Palto and Antoinette, Carolyn Meese, Elizabeth April, Gary Zukoff, Matt Kahn, Andrew Harvey, the Twin Ray, Chief Phil Lane, Alan, who you just saw, Marcy Shimoff, Jayu Tall, and some amazing musicians like Jayu Tall, Nina Gray, Kristen Hoffman, Cornflower, Larissa Stowe, Magic with Paul Draper, Comedy with Swami Beyondananda. It's going to be amazing. My good friend Trish will be co-hosting with me Friday night. Deborah Giusti is coming back to co-host Saturday night. And Kristen Hoffman will be co-hosting with me on Sundays. So please not only come, but tell your friends. This next weekend will be a great way to introduce the awakening world to all of your new friends who don't know how wonderful these shows are. So I'm excited about that. And now we are going to go to gallery view so we can see all of the people who've turned their cameras on at least. And there you are. You are the imaginal cells forming this new beautiful butterfly of the awakening world. Thank you, everybody, for being part of our Zoom room. Thank you, everybody on Facebook, Unify. And also thank you, those of you who are watching the recording. Even though you're not with us live, we love you. We care about you. There's Jeffrey Colebrook. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week. And remember, we can make any moment sacred by just